Hey there! Before we jump into today's episode, we want to thank you for tuning into Unapologetically First Gen. This is the podcast where two sisters share what it's like to grow up as first-generation immigrants, everything from the hilarious moments to the heartfelt ones. Each week, we'll bring you personal stories, honest conversations, and amazing guest interviews that celebrate the first-gen experience. So if you love laughing, learning, and feeling connected, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with your friends. It really helps us grow.
Hello, I'm Stacy, the younger one. I'm a former teacher turned copywriter, cat mom, and romantasy enthusiast.
And I'm Leslie, the older one, operations expert, home baker, mom to 2 kids and a bunny.
Welcome back to another episode. This episode, we're going to be unpacking my trip, Stacy's trip, to the Azores. I never know, how much I should be, me, Stacy, because I feel like our voices probably sound pretty similar.
I am so curious to hear from listeners if you can tell who's who in this.
We also look very similar. This was Stacy's first trip over to the island without my grown-ups. I went with a cousin of ours, and it was a really cool experience to be there pretty much on my own. I mean, I was with my cousin, but she was kind of busy doing her own thing, so I had to do my own thing. And so it was interesting to kind of be an adult human there without other grown-ups. I drove there for the first time.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. I've only driven there on the last time we went.
When you were trying to learn stick.
I mean, I've had some lessons, but sometimes I just feel like the best way to learn is just to do it on a curvy, cliffy island.
I will say I was driving an automatic car, luckily. I did get made fun of for not knowing how to drive stick.
It is very different than when I was driving here, because I was driving here on flat places. It wasn't hard here. I mean, I guess there was more traffic, but it wasn't hard. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I need to know where I'm going. And there are a lot of hills here. And that was tricky. Listeners, go ahead and make fun of us for being dumb for not knowing how to drive.
I will say, the first few days of driving there, when we first got there, it was super rainy and foggy, and I didn't really know my way around, and it felt a little bit stressful. But because it was winter, there wasn't that many cars there, so it actually, once I got used to it, it was pretty relaxing, to the point where when I came home and it was snowing and disgusting out, and I'm like, I hate these stupid flat roads covered in snow. So to get to the island our family is from, we actually have to have a layover in kind of the main central island that everybody flies into. We had 8 hours there, so we went to go sleep because we got in at 6 a.m. And then went to go visit an aunt, and then went to have lunch with my 5th grade teacher who lives there now, which was really nice. But something that happened on that island that I thought was so funny was once we left the hotel, I asked the front desk, I said, hey, can you get me a cab? She was like, yeah, sure, totally. So the cab comes and I'm like, hey, here's the address for my aunt's house. And he's like, well, I don't know where that is. And I'm like, okay. He's like, ma'am, do you have GPS on your phone? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, can you look up the address? Good thing I speak Portuguese, because I'm literally directing this cab driver from the hotel to my aunt's house because he did not know where it is. And I don't know, when I got to the island, I was telling the cousins this story, and they're like, how does he not have his own GPS?
Okay, I was like, is this normal? Is it just kind of
I think it's normal.
I would assume that he wouldn't have a GPS because though it's the big island, it's not that big. He probably just assumed, I'm going to know all the places the tourists want to go.
Well, actually, now that you're saying that, when we got to the airport and took a cab to the hotel, we said the name of the hotel, and he actually got out of the cab, went to the cab behind him, and asked which hotel it was.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe a lot of them don't have GPS.
Huh, that is interesting. But it's not like you were carrying around a GPS device. You had, your phone.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting thing. When you left, did you have to get on the tiny plane?
I mean, I thought it was tiny, but I don't think it was the tiny plane. It's not the tiniest plane we've been on. The tiny ones I feel hold 40 people. This was probably like, I don't know, double or triple that.
When we went and we took our husbands, I think it was really funny that we didn't tell them about the tiny planes. We just were sort of like, hey, our layover's done. Let's head back out. And then we were like, follow us out to the tarmac. And like, I think they were just sort of watching people go into this like teeny tiny plane. And we were like, oh, that's the plane we're going on. Well, and it was like, maybe 40 people.
Yeah, and the funny thing too is the second flight is so short, and literally they're like, okay, we're taking off, and then they'll be like, welcome passengers, you are now at your cruising altitude, like blah blah blah, and then like, I shit you not, 5 minutes later they're like, and now we're arriving on the island, welcome.
It is exactly it. There's no unfasten your seatbelt. There's no time for that. It's just...
No, you cannot go pee on that flight.
No, you don't have the time. You just hold it until you get to the airport. The best thing about the trip that we went on before COVID was, for some reason, you got checked all the time. Every airport we went to. We did 6 islands. I don't know how many flights it was because we did some ferries, but it was like you got pulled aside maybe 4 times.
I know. I do think it was because I had like the red purple hair at the time. And they were like, this girl's on drugs.
It was just so funny. It was a family of 6 going through security, and every single time they were like, you there.
I did not get pulled this time.
I did wonder that when you were going. Maybe now you look more like a grown-up.
Yeah, that must have been it. They must have been like, what is this girl doing here with like the different hair? She's young.
She's clearly a troublemaker. Yeah. Tell us, so you had the layover. You did a couple of things there. You got on the teeny tiny plane. You got to our island. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, it was a great trip. I pretty much was doing minimal work every day. I would just kind of check in. But I was mostly just like going and sightseeing and spending time with family. I went and like visited the cemetery and visited our grandfather's old house, which is now falling apart. It felt like I was home, I felt like very grounded. It was just like very good for my soul. I feel like I don't want to go too deep into it. I literally cried for 2 days when I came back because I was like, I hate it here, which I don't. It was just like the post-vacation blues, and it's so hard.
I think it's more than the post-vacation blues. It's just you're leaving a part of you behind every time. But you did text me like the day before, and you were like, I'm just leaving. I'm not saying bye to anybody because I can't do the goodbyes. And I was like, I need the goodbyes. I mean, I am ugly crying at the airport, bye to people, but like, I need them in order to like transition back to American life.
I promised everybody I would come back soon. And I'm like, now that I'm not a teacher, I can come back in the off season. Like, it's not expensive to go there in the winter. It's really expensive to go there in the summer. But I'm like, I'll be back in a year. Like, we're not going to make this sad. But it is like what you said, like leaving a part of you behind. It's like we still have so much family there. And like, it was just cool to like reconnect with everybody. But like everybody, all our aunts and uncles are getting so old. And I did love like just listening to their stories about our parents without our parents being there. Like they're like, hey, like really let me share like all of these like tidbits about like when your parents were kids. I think like one of my biggest takeaways that I want to bring with me from there back here is this pace of life idea of like so many people I talked to said, you guys have more stuff. You guys are, we have better healthcare. We can order anything off of Amazon and get it the next day. We have, which don't. Side note, boycotting Amazon. Yes. But they have this, they don't have as much stuff. They don't have as much accessibility to anything they want all the time, but they talk about their quality of life being better. And you can really see that because there's no hustle. There's not this whole idea of like, I have to work all the time to make my life work. It's like, hey, I'm going to go to coffee with my coworkers before I go into work, and then I'm going to work until lunch, and then at lunch, everybody takes lunch. Everybody goes to a restaurant. I'm going to shut it
down at lunch.
Yeah.
There's no working through lunch there.
Unless you work at a restaurant, in which case you have to work at...
Fair. But, if you're working, like, I worked in finance prior to
all the bank employees go out to lunch together. They shut down the bank.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Like, that would be unheard of here. And, like, I found it hard to pull away, and I wasn't in a customer-facing position, and it was still hard to stop.
And even the kids can, like, you don't have to leave school for lunch. You can stay, but a lot of the kids, especially the older kids, also go. One of the days, I went with my cousin to eat at a restaurant, and it's like on one side of us is like all of the parents eating lunch together, and then like the other side of us, all the kids eating lunch together. And they're just like yelling across the room, like, who's gonna pay the bill? But it's just like such a sense of community in that slow pace of life. And like, you know, even in the summer, everybody clocks out at 5. It is like they look at their watch. 5 o'clock hits, like they are done. They separate work from life really well. They're done at 5 p.m. and like in the summer they just go to the beach at 5 p.m. and then they enjoy their life. That was another thing that I heard so much is like, yeah, we work to live, we don't live to work. And I think that's just something that I want to carry with me even under capitalism. And I think that also like leaving teaching was a big part of this. I'm not here to work. Like, I'm here to live my life, and my work supports my life and not the other way around. But I think that was like a really big theme that I noticed, like a really big cultural difference.
Right. I agree, and I feel like it always takes me like half a day when I get there before I'm like, oh right, my brain doesn't need to work at 100 miles per hour. I can just relax here, even if I have other things to do. Like, even if I have things to do, I don't know, just something about being there really, like, quiets my racing brain. There's nothing that can do that here.
I think, too, is, like, part of it, too, is here is we're in a city versus, like, there, I'm waking up to moose. I wake up to cows. And there's the ocean.
Not chickens? Not the rooster?
No, I didn't really see... I mean, people had chickens and roosters, but not nearby where I was staying. Nearby was a lot of cows. But it's like everything was so green because it's winter and it's raining and being by the ocean. And I think just that moment of nature, too. That's a big reason why I started doing Rover, was so that I would actually go outside, because I work from home, I could just stay home, and then I don't get that being with nature thing. And doing Rover and going outside, and even if it's just walking by a few trees, that is so good for you.
Yeah, I definitely need to work on that myself. It's just like getting outside. It's just so hard in the wintertime.
It is so cold here.
It's so cold. It's so gray and miserable, and right now it's so icy. And then I don't know when this podcast is going to be released, but it's currently like mid-February right now. So it's cold and it's icy, and I don't like it. I'm not a fan.
It was so funny too, because I was either in a t-shirt or a hoodie the whole time. I brought a jacket. I brought a light jacket. I don't know why. I kept listening to my mom being like, it's so cold there, it's winter. And no, it was like 60 degrees. It felt very warm. But all of the people who live there are like in their poofy coats because they think it's really cold. And I'm just like, I should go take pictures of the snow that then rained and turned to ice, and you literally have to like drive over these like mounds of ice to get to your parking spot and be like, this is what cold is.
Funny that you should say that, because there was a parking spot right near your place today, and I parked like a couple spots down because I didn't want to deal with a mountain of snow. I was like, oh God, it's gonna be pain to park in this spot. I was like, I'll just park further down. But that's the winter we're experiencing. So it's so different there. It's so calming.
Yeah, and a few more thoughts. One is that one of the things that I asked one of my cousins, because she works in a school, I was asking like, hey, do you guys do active shooter drills? And she literally didn't even know what that was. And I know most countries don't have that problem, but it's so normalized here in the US of having to practice that I don't know. That just made me feel like things just feel so much more normal here.
Yeah. Things make more sense.
Yeah.
And it does have its downsides living there. It's a small island, so you are a little bit isolated. And, you had mentioned, they said we have better healthcare. true because they're on a small island, not because the system itself is bad.
And because of where we live here, we are in a good place with access to a lot of good hospitals.
Agreed, yeah, and we're in a place that is generally supportive of women's health care.
Correct. Versus there, I would not want to have a kid there. I know people do it all the time, but like you have to literally fly to another island to give birth. And
yeah, the government just kind of puts you up in a hotel or an apartment, and then you live there until after you give birth, and then they fly you home.
Yeah, but it becomes really scary when it's like more for older people who have health emergencies. So people dealing with strokes or heart attacks, they basically have to get on a military plane that takes them from one island to the other. But a lot of the times it doesn't happen fast enough. And so people end up having these like big repercussions because they don't have that easy access to healthcare. So that is definitely one of the downsides of the slow living.
Yeah, and sort of clarification point is the island has what is essentially like the equivalent to like a clinic here where you would see your regular doctor. But if you needed a specialist, if you needed your dentist, you're going to fly.
No, they have a dentist now.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Nice. All right. So if you need like a specialist, then you would, or a hospital stay, you would have to fly to one of the main islands
or to Lisbon.
Or to Lisbon, yeah, to get services there.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like the another thing that I found funny was the vets there. They work on the pastures during the day to be with all the cows because on that island in particular, the beef industry is a huge income source. So the vets work on the pastures during the day and then they go into the little town at night and they start to care for all the pets. And so they're open for a few hours in
Which
the
is
evening.
a new concept.
Yeah.
Having a cat or a dog as a pet.
That was something I noticed that was really different because the last time we were there, pre-COVID, so I think it was 7 years ago, dogs were always outside. Dogs were not an inside animal. But now, I met at least 2 dogs that were very spoiled, that lived inside the house.
Yeah, that's quite different. I remember, like, as a kid, I think I asked about, like, a vet for, like, a cat I had seen outside, and they were just kind of like, what are you even talking about? I remember one time the cat had just had kittens. He like called me over and he was like, do you want to come see them? And I was like terrified to go in the shed because it was really dark. And then he was like, no, they're over there. And you could hear the little like mews of the cat.
Aww.
And it was like so sweet.
And now that you're talking about Grandpa too, our grandpa had a donkey and that was like his esteemed best friend.
Oh yeah, I always think of them as like the dynamic duo.
Yeah, but donkeys are now endangered.
You had mentioned this before,
yeah.
And I can't even wrap my brain around that.
It's so crazy. I'd never really thought about it.
I guess it makes sense because now people have cars and trucks.
Yeah, you're not using donkeys as much.
Right, because Grandpa was using donkey to travel and to take carry things around that if he was around today, he would have done with like a pickup truck.
And everybody has trucks now.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the other thing I wanted to mention in this episode is, because I was talking about this in therapy, is how privileged I feel that our parents really emphasized speaking Portuguese and keeping the culture, because I can go back and I can basically like just be a regular community member and like I can go to the grocery store and ask for what I need. And, one of the things I did was go to the store and buy Velcro. And I even was like on my phone, like, how do you say Velcro in Portuguese? It's Velcro. And then I thought it was hilarious. And I had to tell the woman at the store, I was like, oh, I get nervous sometimes, but I just looked it up. And she was like, oh, don't worry. My English is trash. Your Portuguese is good. But there was multiple people being like, oh, it sounds like you could have been born here. It's really cool that you speak the language so well. And for me, knowing that we have cousins that don't know how to read and write in the language, don't necessarily speak the language, who want to learn the language, but are having a hard time learning it now as adults, like I feel very, very lucky that I can kind of go back and forth and be a citizen here and be a citizen there and be an active member of the community there.
Yeah, and that's something that's really important. And I hated it at the time, but I'm really glad that our parents took the extra time and care to reinforce the language, both in speaking and in writing. And it's now something that I'm trying to pass on too. So my oldest is only 3 and she's learning to identify letters. So she'll say, Mommy, what letter is flowers?
Oh.
And you're like, oh, it's F. Flowers. But she does it in Portuguese too.
That's awesome.
So she'll ask me about Portuguese words. Or sometimes she'll say, I'll be talking, and this is totally her quoting me, but she'll say it in Portuguese. She'll be like, Mom, say it in Portuguese. Like if I'm saying something in English. My plan is to teach her how to read and write in Portuguese as she's learning how to read and write in English, so that it becomes very natural for her, and then also later on for her brother.
Well, it's cool too because we have cousins there who have kids. Everybody had kids around COVID.
It was the thing to do. It was the thing to do.
But there's at least 3 small children around her age there. So I think it's really nice that your kids will be able to kind of recreate the same kind of memories that we had. And we would go there and play with our cousins and, you know, spend a few weeks there. And now they get to go there and they'll be able to play with their cousins and get to know their cousins and, you know, cousins that live very differently and speak differently. And it's just such a cool thing that, like, you get to pass on now.
And I'm so excited for that. I can't wait to take her. As you were talking, I mean, to take both my kids, but as you were talking, I was like, maybe I should just take her, like, just like a mommy-daughter trip to get to know her cousins there. Or I guess there would be like her second cousins. But even still, I think when we will have a conversation at a later point about how big our family is and all of our cousins. And I think that will start to make sense when I'm calling my cousins' children my daughter's cousins. You know, it's a complicated thing. I mean, families are complicated. For lack of better words, I can't wait to take my kids there so they can meet their cousins.
Okay, so that's everything that I have about that trip. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of Unapologetically First Gen. If this episode resonated with you, or if you have your own first gen stories to share, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on Stacy Braga Copy or Rather Be Baking Breads on Threads and Instagram. You can find it in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with someone who'd love it. Until next time, keep embracing your roots and making your own path.